Hi, it's July 22nd, 2019. I'm Nancy Harrington, and I'm here with Daniel Lipman for the Interviews in Oral History of Television and the Writers Guild Foundation at the Writers Guild Library in Los Angeles, California.
Cut. Camera rolls.
All right, so we just want to get a little bit of background information.
Sure.
What was your name at birth?
My name, and it continues to be, Daniel Rear Lipman. I was named after my grandfather, who was Austrian, and I think they probably pronounced it rare, but for some reason my family pronounces it Rear. Of course, I was terribly ashamed of it when I was growing up, but I usually just use Daniel Lipman or Daniel R. But that was also my mother's maiden name. So.
And when and where were you born?
I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, on August the 2nd, 1950.
And did you grow up in Baltimore as well?
Yes, yes.
So tell us a little bit about your childhood and what your parents were like.
I had wonderful, wonderful parents. I had very tyrannical grandparents. And they really were not fond of me because I was named after my mother's father. So they favored my brother, who was named after their son who had passed away. And I was sort of shunted away. But my parents knew this, and they were wonderful to me. They were the buffer. They were my best friends, and I had a lovely childhood. I never wanted for anything. I really had a lovely time growing up.
What traits do you think you inherited from your parents?
I think my father was very playful and very boyish and silly, which in a good way, and I think I've inherited that. And my mother was extremely tolerant of everything, and I think I inherited that.
What were some of your interests growing up?
Well, when I first started thinking what I wanted to do, I wanted to be an artist, and I would take art lessons, and I sort of wanted to veer into graphic art. But then my life really began when I was 10 years old, and my parents took me to see the touring company of My Fair Lady at the Ford's Theater in Baltimore. And it's funny, I've seen thousands of shows since then, been involved in the theater. Most of them I can't remember. I remember every single moment of that show. And when I walked out, I said to my parents, that's what I'm going to do with my life. 10 years old. And they patted me on the head, said, okay, dear. But that's exactly, my life began then.
Did you know what you wanted to do? Did you want to be on stage? Or?
I didn't. I thought I could be a producer, a director. I was more leaning towards that. Mm-hmm. But of course, if somebody wanted to put me in a production, I wouldn't turn it down.
Did you watch a lot of TV as a kid?
Oh, yes. Yes. I know Ron said he was the first generation, as was I. And watched a lot of TV. And all these, I just remember watching, as a very little kid, Queen for a Day was on, and watching I Love Lucy when it was on originally. Very much, and television really influenced me, definitely influenced me.
And where did you go to college and what did you study?
I went to Boston University, to the School of Fine Arts, and I went in as a director, and I ended up went in as a director and ended up as an actor. And it was a very, very intensive program. And in fact, the first few years you were there, you had to be on the crew at the Huntington Theater, so which means that you had your classes from probably 8 o'clock in the morning, and then at 4 o'clock you had to go to the theater, and you stayed there until your assignment was 1 o'clock in the morning. You had to come back to your dorm, and you had to do your homework or whatever, and you had to be ready for. So it was very, very grueling, but it really prepared me in a way for not only being in the theater, but also running series, because that's your life. We were doing Queer as Folk as an example. I would get 3 hours of sleep a night. And that was, but I was prepared for that.
So what did you do after college?
Well, college was BU was a very important step for me because we had a theater history class with Elliot Norton, who, Nancy, you're from Boston, you know, he was the father of all drama critics. In fact, I think it's the reason why shows tried out in Boston, because he would, I think Neil Simon insisted that every show go to Boston. I know that he made suggestions for The Odd Couple and for other shows. And he taught theater history. And one day he said, I heard Ron say that Jerry Lawrence had said to him, we had a very similar path. Elliot Norton said to the class, if any of you decide to write a play, I'd be happy to read it. Well, most of the people in the class were actors, they weren't interested in writing, but I heard him, and I went back to Baltimore for that summer of my, I guess it was my sophomore year, and I wrote a play. And I came in September with Mr. Norton, and who had an office there, and I presented him with my 400-page play, and he just looked at it, and he read it. And he called me and he said, I read your play, and I think it's far too long, but you really have talent. And what he did was he sent it to Audrey Wood, who was Tennessee Williams and William Inge's agent, legendary agent. And I started this communication with her. She wrote me a letter saying, I read your play, it's far too long, it's very, it's cumbersome, it's lumberous, but you have talent. And if you're willing to work with me, I would like to work with you. I mean, I was 18 years old or 19 years old, and we had this correspondence. And Mr. Norton also gave it to the head of the theater department, who decided to produce it. And I was the first undergraduate or first student to have their play done by the School of Fine Arts. So Mr. Norton really sort of started my career. And the odd thing about having Audrey Wood, who was representing me, was that she was also Ron's agent. And so when we met, we both had her as an agent. It wasn't like, oh, I'll take him because, no, it was, so I owe a lot to Mr. Norton. Yeah. And then, after, after college, I got I need to get a sip of water. I'm so excited, I'm just choking on my past. I got a Schubert scholarship to the University of Michigan. They had a professional theater program, and I was the playwright in residence. And they did my play there. And I think I said earlier that the people who ran this, they wanted Ron Cowan. They kept saying, did I talk about this before?
Go ahead.
So they were saying, I kept hearing Ron Cowan. We got to get Ron Cowan's new play. I've got to call Audrey Wood and get Ron Cowan's new play. So I heard Ron Cowan. And then when we met carrying the beer keg at New York office of the O'Neill, there was Ron Cowan standing before me. So it was fate. It was fate.
And then you did briefly perform, right? Did you,
oh, yes, I did.
You were in Godspell.
I was in one of the original companies.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I was in one of the original companies of Godspell. When we were at the O'Neill that summer, the playwrights all got together, and it was only like a 2-week program there. I mean, they read your play. It was stage reading. So playwrights were on the lawn, and they were all talking about what we're going to do when this is over. And one of them was saying, well, my father, I'm going to go work with my father. I'm going to go see if I can get a job writing for this or whatever, writing for the newspaper, whatever. And I was so naive. I said, I think I'll become an actor. And Ron always ribs me about this. And everybody laughed. So I went back to the city, and I was walking by the Promenade Theater. And Godspell has been a success at the Cherry Lane Theater downtown, and they were moving it uptown. And I walked by the Promenade Theater, and there was a piece of notebook paper taped to the door, said auditions today. And I just walked in. I had no resume. I had nothing prepared, but I had done some improvisation when I was at Boston University. And so most of the, I don't know if you ever saw the show, but it was sort of a clown show, and a lot of it was improvised. And I did my improvisations. I think I sang Happy Birthday to You. And I got into the show. And I toured in the first national tour for a year. And it was a wonderful experience because it was a first-class tour. And also everyone in the cast was in their early 20s. I think we had one old lady in the cast. She was 24. And it was really a terrific experience. And then after that, it kept us going because there were companies all over the country, all over the world, but all over the country, and they would call and they'd say, "Can you go to Washington for a month? Can you go to San Francisco for 3 weeks? Somebody just broke a leg. Somebody did this. Can you do?" And that's, and then eventually I did it in New York for a year at the Promenade Theater off Broadway, and that really, and I did a few commercials, whatever. But all the time I was writing, and when I would go up for things as an actor, the casting directors, the people, the agents would say, "Going up for this role for a 17-year-old." Now, by that point, I was 22 years old. And they said, "Go up for 17-year-old." And I said, "Okay." I walked in, and I would be reading the part, and the casting director would say, "You're not 17, are you?" I couldn't hide it. I just was a little mature for my age. So that kind of died away. But it was okay. I was writing plays the whole time, and Ron and I were involved in writing together, so it was fine.
So at the Eugene O'Neill Playwrights Conference, was the play that they did there that summer the one you wrote at BU?
No, this was a one-act play.
Okay.
It was called Casanova and His Mother, and Miss Wood submitted it to the O'Neill, and I got in, and it was very exciting.
Yeah. What did it mean to you at the time to be accepted into that program?
Well, I didn't know much about it, but I did know that it was a very prestigious place to be. A lot of very important playwrights came from there, and it made me feel a part of the community. And the show did very well there. It was directed by James Hammerstein, who was Oscar Hammerstein's son, and it was, as I said, very, very well received, and I was very grateful to be there. And of course, I met Ron, and My Fair Lady started my life when I was 10, and meeting Ron started my life again when I was 22.
So let's talk about the craft of writing. What do you like about writing?
Well, for me, there's a certain rush in writing. It doesn't happen. An athlete must feel this way. An actor feels this way when they say, "Okay, I nailed it, that perfect performance." Or, I climbed that one mountain. I climbed to the top in record time. The thing about writing for me is when it channels through you. Graham Greene always said that there's always, in his books, one dead character. Well, unfortunately, sometimes there's a lot of dead characters, and you can't bring them to life. And one of the best experiences I've ever had writing was when I was writing, believe it or not, Queer as Folk. Being the showrunner, executive producer, Ron mostly did work with the writers. I worked with the writers, but I also did casting and design and editing. And so I would be at the studio from 8 o'clock in the morning until midnight. I'd come home to the hotel room in Toronto. I'd check email, and it was on that kind of, remember that slow, whatever it was called?
AOL dial-up?
Yeah, it was like the dial-up. It took a half an hour for it to, it was horrible. But anyway, I would check the email. I would make myself a cup of tea. I'd make myself a sandwich. And around 1 o'clock or 1:30 in the morning, I'd start my writing day until 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning. But I didn't mind it because the characters came through me. They absolutely came through me. And I remember we had a table read, and one of the actors came up to me and said, "Dan, that was such a great scene." And I said, "I can't take credit for it. The characters spoke to me." And that's the rush. I just completed a play where the same thing happened to me. These characters came to me. What Ron was saying about having characters being your mouthpiece, no. Sometimes you have to do that because it's not coming. It doesn't come. But when it does come, when it flows, there's something out of body about it. It is. You have to be so grateful that by divine providence, it is coming through you. You are being something is channeling through you, making these characters speak, and that to me is the rush of writing. And every time you write something, you pray that's going to happen. But it doesn't happen all the time. So you really know when it happens. It's like true love. You can date a lot of people or unfortunately marry a lot of people and know it doesn't work. But when you meet that person, that's what love is. That's what true love is. That's what it's like when you're writing.
We talked about your writing process when you were sitting with Ron. Is your process different when you write by yourself?
Yes, because writing with Ron, as we said before, writing with a partner, someone that you trust completely, it's like walking a tightrope and having a net underneath you. With Ron, I can write the stupidest things, I can write the worst, and so can he. And I don't care if he says that stinks or that's a terrible idea, because I fall into the net and I say, fine, I'll climb up and I'll do it again. When you're by yourself, you have your censor. And the last play that I wrote, I realized that I had tried to write a play a year or so before that, and my censor kept coming out. I would write a scene. The next day I'd look at it and I'd say, no, I don't think this is funny. I don't think people are going to like. The censor, the little critic came out. So in the play I just completed, I did an outline, I did all my notes and outline, but I wrote it from beginning to end without going back. And I said, if it stinks when I'm done, I'll throw it away. But I did not censor myself at all. And that was a great process for me, because I allowed my creativity to come out and not be blocked by the little critic, as I call him. He's in there somewhere. I don't like him.
When did you first become aware of the Writers Guild?
I think when we moved to Los Angeles from New York, and we got our first job writing Family, the show Family series, and we had to join the Writers Guild. And that's the first time is really, because we had to. Yeah. And the first time I became aware of it. I knew of their existence, of course, but what really made me aware of them was when there was a strike. I think Ron was talking about that, probably a year or so after we moved here, and we had to go to the Writers Guild. We had to do office work, and we had to picket. And he mentioned, I had a list. They gave me, call Bob Hope, call Cher, tell them they have to go picket. And I remember calling the assistants would answer, and I'd say, I'm Daniel Lipman calling from the Writers Guild, and because we're on strike, we need Mr. Hope or Cher to go to picket or come into the office and do work. You had to do one or the other. And they were just, on the phone, I'd hear this either uproarious laughter or, really, okay, well, fine, I'll give them the message. It was fun. But that's when I really became part of the Writers Guild.
And what do you think are the benefits of being a member?
Oh, first of all, the health benefits. We're so lucky to have the health benefits. When you see what has been going on with Obamacare and the current administration, and the people who may be, 35 million people thrown out of their health care, to know that the Writers Guild has a very, hopefully very sturdy healthcare program means so much. And especially, it didn't mean as much as a younger person. It doesn't mean that much when you're in your 20s, 30s. But as you age and you realize how important it is to have, that is crucial. And also the pensions, if you're lucky enough. And believe me, I'm grateful every day for the success we've had and the career we've had. But you're able to get a pension, and that really helps. And I think that's the benefit of having a union, and a strong union like the Writers Guild. So I'm very grateful to them.
We just have a few summing up questions now. You mentioned your early mentor in college. Have you had other mentors throughout your career?
Yes. I think Mr. Norton was one. Angela Lansbury, we talked about her and her amazing aptitude to just be an amazingly kind person as well as a brilliant talent, and to overcome whatever's, if she can do it, we can do it. But my biggest mentor, I have to say, is Ron. He's the person that sort of set me on my path of, I was writing before Ron, but Ron opened up creative doors to me. And he will always remain the biggest mentor in my life.
Excellent. What advice would you give to an aspiring writer?
I never give advice, unless I'm asked. Really, if somebody asks me, I will tell them. There are a few things. First of all, I think creatively, it's very important to be true to yourself. Everyone has to take jobs, of course. There's nothing wrong with taking jobs. And we were talking before about finding the voice of a series. It's not your work, but you have to sort of mimic it in a way. But I think that to be a true writer, you have to sort of find your inner voice and be true to that. Also, I think to be as kind as you can to people. That's what I've tried to be as a showrunner and a producer. And the benefits are always there to be kind. It's much more difficult to be cruel than it is to be kind. And also, I'd say to young writers, is what's very, very important is that you have to know that you will be able to take care of yourself at a certain age. When you're young, and I speak from experience, you always think, oh, there's always going to be a job. I'm always going to get a job writing. And then it dries up. There's ageism in our industry and in this world, in this country. And I know so many people who are not prepared for that. And they reach the age of 50 or 60, and they're not going to be comfortable. You know, they're going to struggle their whole life. They're going to take little jobs. And it can be very miserable. So you have to know, you have to be very smart about the money that you earn, so that it takes care of you when you get older. And I think that is a great, great comfort to people, to know that they, no matter what happens to them, they do not have to worry about money. And I'm not talking about millions and millions of dollars. I'm talking about just enough that you know that you're comfortable, you can live a good life, because fame and success, money comes and goes, and you have to know that you have to have your feet on the ground, and you live I call it the joys of every day, whatever it is, that whether it's seeing a favorite movie or taking a bath or reading the New York Times in the garden with your cup of coffee, whatever it is, that's what life is all about. And you have to know that you're comfortable and not worrying and stressing. And that's what I tell young people. And I don't know if they'll listen or not, because I was just like those. I'd say, oh, well, another job. We'll be able to the rest of our lives, write a script, get an assignment, whatever. I have a play done. And of course, that's not how the world works.
So we already talked about your proudest career achievements. Do you have any career regrets?
No, I don't have any career regrets. I think one thing that Ron didn't mention is that what I'm really proud of is that I really feel that we used Hollywood, the industry, to our advantage. They didn't use us, because we dealt with projects that we really cared about, and we were so it's not just us. It's not just the talent. It's the luck. It's the ability to do what you want to do, and have that fortune that you're able to do it. That's what I'm very proud of. I don't have any regrets. And a lot of things that I wanted to do never happened anyway. Whether as an actor or as a writer, and that didn't happen. What's interesting to me is that life is sort of, I see as sort of the time and space continuum, where if we had an overview of our life, we would see that everything has been written. We're just, hopefully our end of a life is this big, but we're only here, and we don't know. And I'll give you an example. When leap years was, we lost the financing. We were distraught. And if leap years had gone on, we couldn't have done Queer as Folk wouldn't have happened for us. And I don't know if Queer as Folk ever would have happened, or would have had the success that it was with us doing it. So even though we regretted a lot of things, as you get I don't like to say age, seasoned in life, you realize that things happen for a reason. And the things that don't happen, as they say, sometimes rejection is protection. Sometimes things that don't happen are really for the best, and you don't realize that. And when they say a cliche like "be careful what you wish for," it's really true. So some of the things that didn't happen, I'm sort of glad they didn't happen. But at the time, it was like, you get very angry. Why didn't this happen? It should have happened. So no, basically, I have no regrets, and I feel very, very grateful for that.
And our last question is, how would you like to be remembered?
I would like to be remembered as a kind person who was compassionate, tolerant, who had a great sense of humor and amused people, entertained. I think I do have a talent to amuse, and which I'm grateful for. Made a lot of people comfortable, happy, along with our legacy of our writing. But I think it's very important as a person too, and I think that many people that worked for us and we worked with would probably give me marks for that. And it's not why I did it. It's just you are who you are. Your personality comes out, and my personality has always been that. I'm very interested in people. I listen a lot to people, and people even say, "Oh, you really listen to what I'm saying." Well, of course, I'm interested in you. It's not an act at all. So I think that I'd like to be remembered kindly.
Excellent. Well, we will remember you kindly.
I hope so. I hope
This
you
was
all
a
will.
wonderful day. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much
It's been a
for
wonderful
sitting
day for
down
us.
with
And once again, you guys are great. We're so grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you both.